For nearly 2,000 years, respected historians described people who should not have existed. They placed them at the very edges of the known world. Ancient explorers reported sightings of headless men, tribes with the heads of dogs were seen in the mountains, and strange thieves with a single eye haunted the deserts. These were not myths whispered in taverns. They were written by the founders of history, recorded in volumes meant to document the entire world, and they wrote it as fact. History's most impossible tribes, and why they were believed. These weren't myths whispered in taverns. They were preserved in ink by the founders of history itself, men who claimed to document the world, documented with absolute precision. And yet, at the edges of their maps, they described people who should not have existed. The question isn't whether they were real. The question is why they were believed. Herodotus placed them at the edge of Libya. He did not describe them as monsters. He described them as people with faces embedded in their chests. And here is where it becomes uncomfortable. A real tribe existed, living along the ancient Nile, the Blemmies, a real force in the ancient world. They built, they traded, they fought Rome, but their heads were exactly where heads belong. So how did a real people become headless? Maps copied maps, and the myth took root. As Africa became known, the myth migrated. A real tribe, wearing a myth. Not all strangeness required altered anatomy. Some of it required only one decision. Herodotus called them the androphagi. The name meant exactly what it sounds like. They ate human flesh. Not as ritual, not as myth, but as a defining characteristic. He recorded it the way he recorded agriculture. Burial rites, tax systems. They were not monsters. They were neighbors. In the far north, gold was guarded by griffins and hunted by a tribe with a single eye. One eye, centered in the forehead. They fought griffins for gold. Some modern scholars suspect fossils may have inspired the beast, but the one-eyed thieves remained. No skull has ever been found, and the gold did not end there. In India, ants the size of dogs unearthed treasure. They excavated gold as a byproduct of burrowing. Men risked their lives to steal it before the ants returned. A world where monsters guarded wealth, and humans fought them for it. So why did intelligent civilizations accept this? Why did they accept these myths? Let the question breathe. These were not fools. They were scholars. They documented rivers, wars, tax systems. But beyond the known world, verification ended. Distance. No way to check. Distance. A vast, unbridgeable distance. There was simply no way to check the facts. And when a respected historian wrote something, it became truth. Maps were copied from other maps, over and over, and the edges filled themselves. Pliny described islands off the Atlantic coast of Africa. They were inhabited by women, covered entirely in thick hair, not clothed, biologically covered. And then came the claim of proof. The explorer Hanno allegedly brought back skins. They were displayed in a temple. Some suspect he encountered something else, a species unknown to the Mediterranean world, a myth that may have begun with something real. Pliny placed another people near the Ganges. They had no mouths. They could not eat. They lived by scent, flowers, fruit. They carried perfumes when traveling, and a corrupted smell could kill them. A body sustained by fragrance and destroyed by it. No anatomy supports it, but it was written. In the far north, another tribe appeared. Their ears were enormous, large enough to touch the earth. They wrapped themselves in them. They slept inside their own anatomy. The ears became blankets. They appeared in Europe and in India. The ears grew larger with each retelling. Anatomy stretched, rearranged, exaggerated, but never questioned. Smallness became its own category. Homer was the first to describe them. They were known to have fought cranes. Even the great Aristotle accepted their existence. They were said to have lived underground. They rode into battle on rams. Because horses were too large, they frequently raided the nests of cranes, and the cranes always retaliated with force. Stories of them appeared throughout Africa. They were also spotted across India, on islands in the Red Sea. They were found on many different continents, yet they always shared the same description. They were described as incredibly small beings. They were deeply fearful of taller humans, and they would always flee on sight. Many ancient poets described them in detail. The great philosophers endorsed their reality. Natural historians cataloged them as real creatures. They became part of geography. They were considered a fact, not fantasy. Their existence was officially and formally recorded. A world where the edges never emptied. Not all impossibilities were violent. Some were simply different. They were said to have one leg and one truly enormous foot, which defined them. In the heat of the day, they rested beneath their own shadow. Their limitation, a single leg, defined their life, became their protection. At the edge of every medieval map, they waited. They marked the boundary between knowledge and the vast, uncharted realms of imagination. No skeleton confirms them, for they belong to myth. But for centuries, they occupied the margins of the world. For medieval thinkers, these creatures posed a problem. It was not a geographical problem. It was a theological one. Augustine of Hippo confronted it directly. If these beings existed, if headless men lived, if dog-headed tribes, if monopods were real, and if they possessed reason, then they descended from Adam. And if they descended from Adam, then they surely had souls. The question was not whether they were strange. The question was whether they were human. The strangest part of these accounts is not that they were written, it's that they were trusted. Information traveled slowly, verification was impossible, and authority was rarely questioned. Maps copied maps, and with every copy, the myths hardened. They fossilized, not because they were proven, but because they were repeated. History didn't just record the world. Sometimes, it invented the edges of it.